My property. As I watched the bulldozer's massive claw tear through the old barn's weathered boards, wood splintered and cracked, sending dust clouds billowing into the crisp morning air. In the distance, I saw cars arriving at my property's entrance. Their occupants, dressed in their finest suits and flowing gowns, stepped out slowly, confusion spreading across their faces as they took in the scene of destruction before them. Then I saw her. Karen stood frozen at the edge of what used to be the barn. Her lavender mother-of-the-bride dress was pristine against the backdrop of demolition debris. Her mouth hung open, clipboard clutched in her white-knuckled grip as the bulldozer backed away from the rubble, its engines still humming with satisfaction. The look of absolute shock on her face? Worth every penny I paid for the emergency demolition permit. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. 3 months ago, I inherited my Uncle Frank's property, a sprawling 20 acres of countryside bordering the Willowbrook Estate subdivision. The land came with an old barn. Uncle Frank occasionally rented it out for community events. Nothing fancy, just local fundraisers or the occasional family reunion. The barn was in rough shape now, and I planned to eventually tear it down for a more personal project. That's when I first encountered Karen Henderson, the HOA president of Willowbrook Estates. She showed up at my door one sunny Tuesday morning, power walking up my gravel driveway in designer workout gear, clipboard already in hand. She introduced herself with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and immediately launched into a speech about community standards and property values. She asked about my plans for the barn. When I mentioned I was considering demolition, her face lit up with an expression I can only describe as predatory enthusiasm. She said, in a syrupy sweet tone, the barn was such a charming venue, and it would be a shame to lose such a valuable community asset. I politely, but firmly, told her it was private property, and I wasn't interested in maintaining it as a public space. The first sign something was wrong came 6 weeks later. A florist's van pulled up to my gate on a Thursday afternoon. The driver buzzed the intercom, asking where to deliver the sample arrangements for the Henderson wedding. I told him he had the wrong address. He insisted, showing me an order form with my property's address clearly printed on it. Then came the caterer the next day. She asked to see the kitchen facilities. I told her there was no kitchen in the barn and no wedding booked here. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email thread. The sender was someone claiming to be me, signing off as ethan.venuemanager@gmail.com. My actual email has nothing to do with venue management. My blood ran cold. I called Karen immediately. She answered on the first ring, cheerful, as if she'd been expecting my call. When I confronted her, she laughed it off as a misunderstanding. But when I pressed further, her tone turned condescending. She explained her daughter was getting married, and they just assumed the barn was available, since it had hosted events before. She said, with mock concern, that canceling now would devastate her daughter and ruin the lives of over 150 guests. She even had the audacity to suggest I was being selfish. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. What I learned made my jaw drop. Because vendors had been paid deposits and contracts existed, even fraudulent ones, a judge might allow the wedding to proceed under the doctrine of detrimental reliance. Karen's deception had caused vendors and the couple to act in good faith. Fighting it in court could take weeks. The wedding was in 10 days. That night, I lay awake. The barn really was in bad shape. I'd already gotten a demolition quote. The beams were rotting. The roof leaked. It was a lawsuit waiting to happen. By morning, I had a plan. I called the county building inspector and requested an emergency structural assessment. He came out that same afternoon. By 5 p.m., I had a report declaring the structure unsafe for public gatherings. By Monday morning, I had an emergency demolition permit in hand. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday. I hired a demolition crew for Friday morning, paid triple rates for the rush job. Karen, I knew from social media, had a 7 a.m. salon appointment for wedding day prep. Her daughter and bridal party would be with her for hours. The timing was perfect. By 10 a.m., the barn was nothing but splintered beams and sawdust memories. I sat on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the crew load debris into dumpsters. Then the wedding guests began to arrive. A string quartet showed up first. Confused, they unloaded instruments and stared at the demolition site. Then came the florist. Then the rental company, with folding chairs. My phone rang nonstop. I let it all go to voicemail. Vendors milled around. Guests looked lost. Chaos brewed. At exactly 11:15 a.m., Karen's white SUV tore up the access road. She leapt out, hair still in elaborate curls, and stared in horror at the rubble. Her face went pale, then red, then a dangerous shade of purple. She stormed across the grass, heels sinking with each furious step. She screamed that I'd ruined everything, accused me of destroying her daughter's life, threatened to sue, accused me of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Behind her, a crying bride stood in stunned silence. I stood up, set down my coffee, and pulled out my phone. First, I showed Karen the building inspector's report. Then, the emergency demolition permit. Then, I played a recording of our call, where she admitted to organizing the wedding without my permission. But the real kicker? Evidence my lawyer helped me gather. The fake email address traced back to an IP address linked to her house. A venue website, using photos of my barn, registered to a credit card in Karen's name. The bride's family looked horrified. The groom's parents threatened to sue her. The vendors joined in, some of them still owed thousands. Karen went from accuser to accused. People surrounded her, demanding answers. She sputtered it was a misunderstanding, but the evidence